Hello, my name is Mace Hall, and I'm so glad that you are watching this video for the One Land Ministry here at Peachtree Road. And today we're going to talk about a topic that pretty much has affected every family you and I know, addiction. We are fortunate today because Allie Mae is coming to talk to us. Her name is Allie, and her last name is May, and like so many people in the South, she just goes by a double name, Allie Mae, and we're really thankful you're here. So, Allie Mae, let me ask you, I'd love for you to tell the folks about your background.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. I was born and raised here in Atlanta, born at Piedmont Hospital, went to Westminster as an Alpha Omega from preschool through high school, then went to University of South Carolina. I grew up over near the country store on Davis Drive, and have a sister who's 8 years older than me, who I'm very close with. And for the exception of living in Columbia for college and then living in Charleston, South Carolina, early in my career, I've been in Atlanta for the past 18.
So sometime in all of this, between high school and college, I'm guessing you were introduced to drinking.
Sure.
Can you tell us, how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Mom and Dad were very, try to be very cosmopolitan with drinking, and I appreciate their efforts. When I was younger, they wanted to expose me to drinking, so it wasn't something that was taboo that I was kept from, hoping to keep me from having a problem down the road, because both of their fathers did. So I think their approach was, we'll introduce you to drinking, you can have wine with us as you're growing up, so it won't be this, elusive thing that you have to wait till you're 21. So I did grow up having wine with them, and in hindsight, I probably enjoyed it a little too much. I got into having some nightcaps with my mom when I was younger, and I think they saw it as very innocent. I don't think they saw any red flags with that. And then, in high school, in the summers at the beach, we'd drink a lot. Again, everyone was drinking a lot. In college, it's hard to tell. Everyone's binge drinking. It's not the environment to really determine when you have an issue. I didn't really realize that I had an issue until my early 30s when, it's not that I drank every day, and I certainly didn't have a problem every time I drank. It's just when I was in my early 30s, I realized, wow, I sometimes drink more often or more than other people. And at that point began my journey of trying to quit.
So it's interesting you say that, because as you know, my kids are young adult and teens, and the conventional wisdom is you raise them in a way where there's no stigma around alcohol. It's about sipping a glass of wine with a dinner that complements the meal, and that it is something in moderation that can be enjoyable and enhance the experience. And so thinking about that you have grandparents that had alcoholism, have you talked to doctors at all about the genetic component of your disease?
Sure. Genetics, there's so many factors that increase your likelihood to become an addict. So if you're predisposed genetically, that's certainly one of them. But we've gone through so much in the past couple years with the pandemic that would push people further into addiction than even genetically. And every person's so different. Our fingerprints are unique. So our addictive patterns are unique. And, looking back on it, I don't think that my parents had any idea. I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way. I think the important thing when it comes to conversations around addiction is just having that conversation and it being an open topic that, we want to try to be showing you the right way to drink or not drink, whatever your parenting style is. But if you see red flags, talk about them. Or if you feel like there might be an issue, your kids wouldn't feel uncomfortable coming to talk to you about it.
So it sounds like you have a great relationship with your folks.
Well, my father passed away 9 years ago. Actually, that had its challenges, and then my mom is still alive, and we are very close.
And so did your mother ever have any idea what was going on?
I'm 47, so my parents parents now are very different from parents then. I do not have children. I'm very close to my niece and nephew. I think having had issues, I would know the red flags to look for. I think mom and dad were doing the best they could with the information they had, knowing that both of their fathers had had a problem with it. And I think it was very progressive what they were doing and were being told to do as far as, it not being a taboo thing in our house. So,
yeah, I mean, it sounds just exactly like what the parenting groups that I participate in now say to your teens. It doesn't, as opposed to I'm 8 years older than you are, but it was much more like, shh, let's not talk about this.
I don't think there's a right way or wrong way. I mean, how do we really know, So
Exactly. So let me ask you this. So in your social groups, how is drinking viewed? Like, was it, hang out after work, go get a cocktail? Sure. Was it just party on the weekends?
Yeah. So, I began in the hospitality industry right out of college here in Atlanta. And then I moved to Charleston, continued to work in the hospitality industry, and then 17, 18 years ago went into real estate. So the hospitality industry, you're working so late that by the time you get off, it's midnight and everyone's going to a bar, So the hospitality industry is ripe with issues. There's a lot of people that are in the sobriety world now. Real estate, honestly, like a lot of other sales job, isn't that different. You have very weird hours, you're self-managed, you're entertaining a lot, at least I was. So, I never really had a career that had a structure to it. It was a very moving target as far as my schedule and, just my friends here too. We were all going out all the time. Atlanta, there's just lots of opportunity and lots of things to do every night. So
it sounds like it was just part of the norm of the culture.
Yes, I 100% feel I was not hanging out under a bridge, drinking with people. I was, having a very fancy lifestyle, having cocktails with my friends. It all began very innocently.
So, given that, what made you realize that there was something that wasn't just, I'm in the hospitality industry, I entertain a lot. Everything you say to me sounds like being young and starting a career.
Young and fun. So, I think that there are a couple things. My sister being 8 years older, my brother-in-law is 10 years older, I've been able to observe their friend groups. I was seeing patterns. When I was 33 is when I first got sober. And, someone said something to me, how do you know what rock bottom is? And they said, well, it's when you stop digging. And I realized I had the foresight to say, I'm drinking a lot right now. I even see some friends of mine drinking a lot more than me, and it's not looking cute. Like, it's cute-ish when you're a teenager or in your 20s. In your 30s, it's not cute, and I knew that going into my 40s and beyond, I really didn't want to be the drunk person sitting at dinner, thinking I'm the funniest person in the world. So when I was 33, I had a little bit of foresight to see 10 years down the road. And that is kind of why I stopped to begin with. That journey ebbed and flowed. I had 5 years sobriety. Then I had a lot of life things happen. And there's a lot of ways to get sober. Not going to get into all of that. But the program that I was working, I was not working well. And so when all these life issues happen, I didn't know how to handle them. And I started drinking again, only because I thought I just need something to take the edge off, just a glass of wine with dinner. And it started very innocently again. I went back out drinking for 5 more years. And I say went back out, but again, it was very fancy. It was very elegant. Things that I did start incorporating is I had, because of the stress that I had had with these life events, my father had passed away. One of my very best friends had died unexpectedly. I was prescribed anxiety medication. And I did not understand that would also become a substance that I would start abusing and become addicted to. It was prescribed by a doctor. I wasn't buying it on the black market. I was taking it as prescribed with the amount, but that combined with my drinking began a very dark descent into, coupled with some depression that I really had never dealt with, just became a trifecta of darkness.
So you got sober for how many years the first
5
time?
years.
5 years.
The first time. And actually, it happens quite often. You think, I never had a hard time stopping. I could stop drinking for weeks, months at a time. It wasn't like I was a daily drinker. It's just that I didn't want to stay not drinking. And I think, again, when those moments happened in my life, I thought, I've got this. I haven't had a drink for 5 years. I'm doing great. My career's great. Life is great. This isn't a problem. And it took 5 years for it to get progressively worse, actually. But I'm thankful for that because that was part of my journey. It had to get worse. So I'm thankful for that.
So you were sober for 5 years, but you were taking the anxiety medicine, and then you started taking both of those together. And how long before you realized that was an issue?
I don't think I realized it was an issue until maybe 4 years into it. And I dipped my toe back into thinking about not drinking again. And, it took me 4 times total of trying to get sober. One time 5 years, a couple times 30 days here or there. And then finally, there was a very delineating moment. And it's a story I like to share. My life was going very well on paper. I was very successful. I had a great career. I had just finished renovating a beautiful penthouse in Buckhead. I had just bought myself a Porsche. I mean, again, these are not things that you would identify as maybe someone that has an issue with drinking or prescription pills or even call them an addict. You'd probably, if you just were looking from the outside, think that person's got everything that they need. And I remember shortly after my designer had finished with my condo and I was standing up there looking out at this gorgeous skyline of Buckhead, and I even remember kind of thinking to myself, I've got this fancy outfit, a drink in my hand, and this gorgeous place, looking at the skyline, and really, I'm so sad. All I want to do is just jump off this balcony. And it wasn't really a thought of active suicide. It was just my place, my life had gotten to a place where it just felt very dark, and I didn't care if I woke up the next day. And that is something that I've talked to a lot of people that they struggle with. It's like life just gets tough, and you use something like drinking or prescription pills or drugs to turn down the volume, especially with what's been going on the past couple years. And that's totally understandable, and then it gets kind of like a compounding effect, and it just gets to the point where you just don't want to wake up the next morning.
So if you had died, it wouldn't have been ruled a suicide necessarily, but it wasn't
I don't think I would have
actively death by suicide, but it wasn't, I'm not trying not to die.
Correct. I don't think I actually would have acted on actively trying to kill myself, but if I drank too much and took too many pills one night, just trying to turn down the volume, I wouldn't have cared if I didn't wake up. Life just got to be too much, and I'm glad that I got sober long before the pandemic because, you put a life event like that on top of what you're already dealing with. I see why there's so many issues that are just astronomical with addiction right now.
Let me ask you this. When you were going through this, you were young. I mean, did you have family and friends that you felt like you could talk to about this? I mean, or was there a shame or an embarrassment or a feeling that you needed to hide something you were dealing with?
I think I've always been a really driven person. I'm very competitive with myself. I'm not really competitive with other people. So for me, I've always put this tremendous amount of pressure on myself. Like, you could have done so much more had you not let that set you back. And, I'm a firm believer now that this was part of God's journey for me. This was part of my path. It's gotten me to this moment sitting here with you, having this conversation that I hope just reaches one person, I feel like it's a very important moment for me to be sitting here with you.
But when you're standing on that balcony thinking, I've got everything and I'd like to be on the sidewalk dead, I'm so alone, or I feel so dark. I mean, and I'm just asking out of curiosity, did you feel like there was a social network or a family network or, God, I'd hope a church network
Yeah.
that you could call and no judgment?
I think at that point, even though I was surrounded by people, I felt very alone. And I think that's a common sentiment amongst people that have addiction issues. I was surrounded by clients. I was surrounded by family that 100%, if I had called my sister or my mom, they would have helped me. I just felt very, very alone. I felt deep in a dark abyss. I think that God's hand was 100% in this because I had a second home in Athens at the time. And for whatever reason, I chose to go to an AA meeting. I had a friend who was also partying with me at the time, and they went kind of as moral support. And it's funny, we've both ended up sober this entire time. And I sat in this meeting and sat behind a woman that then became my sponsor. And it was the God's hand in everything. I don't remember going to that meeting. I don't remember really anything that was said in that meeting. I just remember looking around the room, and the women that were in that room especially are now, 4 of those women are now a group of women that are on a group text with me every day, a gratitude text that we keep each other sober, we keep each other supported. These are very, in my mind, successful, impressive women. And all I can say is they had what I wanted, and I wanted calm. I had a lot of drama in my life at the time. I wanted that to go away. I just wanted peace and calm, and I did want God back in my life. And I invited him, he was never not there. I always say that I like to invite God into the room with me. I did that shortly before we began this interview. I just said, God, be in this room with me today. And I think that he was 100% in that room with me. But to answer your question, yes, there were people all around me. Did I think to ask them for help? No. But I think that's typical of someone that's struggling. They can't see the help right in front of their face.
Well, I have 2 questions. I'll start with, how did your relationships with the people that you had been friends, your colleagues, your old friends from high school, your family, your existing relationships, how, if at all, did those change once you were successful like you are now with your sobriety?
It's funny. A lot of people didn't know. I had different groups for different things. So I had my core group of girls from elementary school that have always been supportive no matter what. But those weren't people I was drinking and partying with. The people that I was drinking and partying with, I definitely had to change my playmates and playgrounds, as they say. My sister, she says that she's like, you're a good person, but the sober version of you is the best version of you. I think I was real careful who I let see me in certain environments, and the people that I was drinking and behaving around that I was not proud of, I cut those people out of my life. Everyone else, I think they probably saw an improvement, but probably couldn't have put their finger on exactly what it was. A lot of people, I would say 75% of the people in my life didn't know. I mean, addicts are masters of disguise, a lot of times until it gets to the point that you can't disguise it. But a lot of people didn't know.
No idea.
No idea.
Just looked like
just put in the face.
Success.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, I always joke, smoke and mirrors, as long as I had the right place to live, the right car, the right job, seen at all the right places, went on vacation on all the right places, I could conceal it pretty well.
So your Facebook and Instagram were perfect.
They were perfect. I now have a PR company that handles it for me completely. I really don't enjoy social media. But yes, I kept up appearances the way that I thought they were supposed to be maintained.
Before we started this interview, you were talking to me about suicide, and one of the things you said to me was that the rate of suicide amongst young adults is up to 26%, I think is what you said. What was that? What was it before?
Well, I read something, and that's not active, completed suicide. It was something that I read recently, just this past week, that was saying young adults in their 20s that are contemplating suicide. And contemplating can be anything from not acting on, but just thinking of as an option. And that was at one time when they polled young adults, it was something like 11%. Now it's upwards of 26%. So, which is just a shocking statistic. And again, that's not that they would act on it, but they just think about it.
Do you think that the use of drugs and alcohol, I don't know this, I don't have statistics on it, but I feel like that is so much more prevalent. And I know with having my own teenage kids, attitudes around that are much less strict than when I was their age. Do you think then any of that, feeds into this sense of despair?
What part? What exactly do you mean?
Of waking up and thinking, do I really want to get through today? Today, is it worth it?
So we'll probably have to cut this out. So I'm kind of misunderstanding. So you said their thoughts on drugs, but then their thoughts on suicide.
Well, I just wonder I'm just asking personally after being somebody that's had both of those things happen in your life. Is there any correlation
to drugs and suicide? Okay. So I was trained a couple years into my sobriety this last time. Because I was just very interested in it, and I still do luxury real estate full time, but I wanted to be trained as an addiction coach because I wanted to have that knowledge. So I was trained with an organization in LA to get that certification, and then did some additional training in Charlotte and elsewhere. And absolutely, there is definitely a correlation to abuse of alcohol, prescription pills, drugs, and the increased, I would say, again, not action, but thought process of suicide. I don't know what those statistics are on that right now, but it certainly doesn't help because you think about, for me, I had untreated and undiagnosed depression from an early age. Because I think when I was coming around and growing up in the early 90s, that wasn't a conversation. That wasn't even something to really look for. We didn't even know kind of what the telltale signs of that were. So it's not unusual to have a person that's depressed then use pills, drugs, alcohol to make themselves feel better when you don't realize that a lot of those are depressants that are making it worse, which was certainly true for me. And when you have maybe a depression issue and you're drinking on top of that, of course, that's going to create a compounding effect that would probably increase your thoughts of suicide.
Let me ask you this. What, if you had to just single out or triple out what you think was the recipe for your being successful to get through this?
Sure.
What would you point to?
So I think that's a great question. There are many ways to get sober, and I am a proponent of a lot of them. I think that there's not one way for everyone. For me, it was AA. Clearly, I choose not to remain anonymous, so only the first A applies to me, because I think it's important to share my story. So for me, being in a group and having that structure of going to meetings, having community was really important for me. I think for me, that's why I didn't stay sober the first time. Now I have this core group of women in Athens that are on a daily text chain with. I have a core group of women in Atlanta that we get together regularly. And then my meetings that I go to weekly, that community is what keeps me sober. Again, there are many different paths for many different people. That's what works for me.
Well, I guess the last question I have is, for those of, I'm hoping people at home are watching this, and if they or if you or somebody you love is dealing with addiction, what kind of advice would you give folks for either intervening on someone's behalf or getting help themselves?
Absolutely. So what's interesting about our world is that I feel like a lot of people know someone in the sober community. I would say the first thing to do is, if you know a friend or family member, speak to them first, ask them about, ways, meetings in their area maybe that could help. I think coming to your church, if you have a community like that, One Lamb would be the first phone call that I would make if I were a member of this church, and reach out for support and find out who to speak with, because they are a huge wealth of knowledge as far as resources in Atlanta.
Well, I am just so grateful to you. I mean, your honesty and your candor and your humility, I mean, it is just such a blessing. And I would say to anybody that's watching this, if this is something that you're dealing with or somebody you love is dealing with this, that's why we're doing One Lamb here at Peachtree Road. We are committed to making mental wellness issues just like the common cold or heart disease or anything else you're dealing with medically. It is just part of life. And I hope you'll reach out to a staff member or email me at the One Lamb website. It's on the website. I can't think of the address right this minute, but we really want to help folks in our community that are struggling with issues of mental wellness. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.